welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I will be your host for this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, or any time you're listening, because after all, it is your podcast. Now, joining me today, we could set the way back clock for, like, say, 300 million years. And what happened was a mosquito that had bitten a Jurassic games designer was caught in some amber. Millions of years later with technology, that amber was harvested and the blood that was found in that mosquito was then used to clone a gentleman by the name of Brian Lewis, a games designer who went on to co-create the marvel that was Dinosaur Island. So good evening, Brian.
Hello, how's it going?
Very, very good. I don't know where I was going with that introduction.
Well, it was very dramatic, and I appreciate that.
That's okay. Well, it's been a very dramatic kind of couple of years for you with regards to kind of like your game design career.
It basically definitely has been. It's been a roller coaster ride in a dinosaur theme park.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say it's been crazy. I didn't think it would take off like this, but I'm very glad that it has.
Well, there you go. I mean, what we're interested, obviously, there's a couple of reasons that you're here. And we're obviously going to talk about the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the room, obviously. And there's also been, we're talking about Dinosaur Island. We're obviously going to talk a little bit about the Dinosaur Island Back from Extinction kind of Kickstarter campaign that's going on as well. But first of all, I guess we should say hello to everybody that's out there that's listening to us for the first time. The reason that we're doing this is because, I'll be quite honest with you, we've had Jon Gilmour on a couple of times already, and I keep looking at my Dinosaur Island box and saying, well, Jonathan's been on a couple of times and Brian hasn't. So it just simply wouldn't have been fair if we hadn't asked Brian on at some point. So that's what happened. I think we fired up the Twitterverse and we kind of, I guess, reached out that way. So I'm really glad that you're coming along tonight to have a chat with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
As I say, before we dive into the Dayglow world of game design and what you're doing just now, we always like to have a little bit, kind of a little step back into the past, just to find a little bit more kind of about your history with the hobby. So we'll have we'll have a peek back at the time of the dinosaurs. We'll have a kind of a focus on the present, that is Cro-Magnon man, and then we'll jet off into the future.
Sure.
Of Homo sapiens and building parks, and really wondering not if they could have done something, but whether or not if they should. So,
right.
Do you want to give us a little bit? I was going to try to do a Jeff Goldblum voice, but I don't know if you don't. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your history with the hobby to kind of start off with, Brian?
Sure. I started probably back in about, my guess is going to be about 2000. I was living in Los Angeles. I had just finished grad school. I was getting a degree in music.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and I started.
Were you a singer or a player or
composer?
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, which I still do on the side. I write music for choirs, mostly educational. There's an educational publisher here in the U.S. that handles my stuff. And so I still do that. Not as much as I used to. It's pretty hard to focus on doing both things because they're both time-consuming.
Yeah.
But I was living there, and I needed a job after school. So I started working for a small chain of game stores called Gamekeeper. Yeah. And there were about 80 of them in the U.S., but they focused on all different kinds of games, and they had a strategy game section. And in the strategy game section, we sold Settlers of Catan and Carcassonne, those games, and I had never heard of them before. And part of working there was they had these demos we could take home and play. So I would borrow I remember taking home Settlers of Catan and reading the directions and going, this is really complicated. One of those things. It's like, nowadays you just think, oh, that's so easy. You just say, gosh, this is an easy game. But for a person just getting into the hobby, it was just really kind of overwhelming and I was like, well, I don't know. So I played that, and then I played Carcassonne, and I remember having trouble with the scoring of Carcassonne. What do you mean that these fields are touching these cities and weird things like that? And
how can he claim this if he's lying down?
Exactly.
Why isn't he standing up? What does it matter if all the land surrounding the church is filled in?
Right.
What is that kind of thing? Yeah.
I remember the first. I don't know if it was either the first or second game I bought, that was a strategy game, was Tikal.
Okay.
And just loved that game. That was published by Rio Grande. And then the second one I bought was Acquire. And I regret to this day, it was the really sought after version of Acquire with the 3D buildings.
Yeah.
That sells for hundreds of dollars on eBay now. I gave that away when I moved back to Michigan. I had these games. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'll ever play these again. I didn't know anything about game groups. Meetup didn't exist. I didn't know anything about Board Game Geek. I just thought, well, I'll never play these again. I'll give them to someone I think can use them. So I handed away my collection before.
Did you contact that person and ask them if they still had Acquire at the time?
I didn't. I figured.
Did you not make tentative inquiries?
Yeah. I figured. Well, I can always buy another copy somehow if I need it. Right. I might pay a lot for it, but I can always get it if I need it.
Do you still check eBay on occasion just to see how ridiculous the price is for Acquire now?
I haven't in a while, but the last time I did check, it was in the hundreds. So I thought, nope, not gonna add this to my collection yet.
Yeah, but maybe it's time you owe yourself.
Yeah, I think MasterCard would disagree.
Exactly. Computer says no, I'm afraid. Right. So did that set you off on the line when you brought in, obviously?
Yeah, it was. Well, I moved here and moved to Michigan, and just I really wasn't doing much gaming. And then I met some friends here, and it was my birthday, and they knew I liked games but really didn't play that much, and they ended up buying me a copy of Pandemic. Wow. And we played that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. That was that got me back into it. And then after that, I bought Agricola. And then just from there, it was a some would say downward spiral. It just my collection just grew and grew and grew. And I remember going to Origins Game Fair in Columbus. Gosh, I'm going to guess it was around 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And playing Race for the Galaxy. And
yeah, okay, yeah.
And just, just being blown away by that game. And I wanted it. And so I bought it, and I played it, and that's what kind of got me interested in the game design, was looking at these games, and to me they were like big puzzles. And I've always liked logic puzzles. I've always had an interest in, word games and puzzles and all those kinds of things. So I was like, well, I'm going to try and do this myself. I'm creative type because I'd been writing music for 7 or 8 years, and that's
I'm writing 6-part choir parts here. I've got my altos, I've got my sopranos, I've got my basses, I've got my baritones and everything like that.
Right.
How difficult can it be to put together a 6-deck card game? This is going to be laughing easy. Right.
So I remember, I put together something, and I don't even remember what the theme was, or if there really was a theme. I don't remember. I remember playtesting it and being like, oh, this really isn't very fun. It was one of those. It was a very disheartening moment. So I kind of set it aside.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, a year later, I was like, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to create my own game, and it was a game called Titans of Industry, which was Kickstarted, and it did fund, and it didn't sell thousands of copies, but it was my first published game, and it was fun, and I was like, I could see myself really enjoying this. I don't necessarily do it to make money. If money is made, that's great. It's definitely a nice benefit, but it is very cool to have your stuff out there and have people looking at it and playing it and commenting on it, good and bad. And that's kind of what happened with Dinosaur Island. It was, the Kickstarter last year just blew up beyond anyone's expectations. And just the response has been phenomenal. And I love interacting with the players, consumers on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
But how did you get to Dinosaur Island? Because
it was, well, that's a good. I had been working on a few other things after Titans of Industry, and I went to it was called Protospiel, and it's a series of events here in the U.S. that different cities host them, and it's just designers and playtesters get together and you bring games or you playtest games. And I was there, and I was playtesting a couple short, smallish fun games, if you will. Not that any game shouldn't be fun, but I mean light games. And I met Jon at this Protospiel in Ann Arbor, and he was working on a game at that time. I think it was called Salvage Wars or Storage Wars or something like that, but which ended up being Vault Wars for him.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right.
It's such a good fun game.
Yeah, it is a really fun game. So I remember talking with him, and I just said, hey, we should work together sometime. And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do that. This one of those, yeah, sure, this will never happen, right?
Well, that's the thing, but that's what John's like. I mean, it's like you say to Jon, shall we, if I send you over this, could you take a look at it for me? And Jon will do it. He is one of these guys. I don't know how he finds the number of hours in the day that he has. But everybody that says, well, I've tried to, I've worked with Jon and I've passed a comment, the next thing I know is like he sent me a message or I've sent him an email, and he's always made time, regardless of what you're doing. If I'm saying, do you fancy coming on the show? He's always said, yeah, let's get something in the diary, let's get it sorted out kind of now. So he genuinely, I think he's looked on with a lot of affection for what he's done for the industry and the kind of I guess what he tries to continue to do in the industry as well. So yeah, but you're sitting there and thinking, well, I'll ask this person, and if they, he says okay, yeah, and then so did you follow that up, or did he follow up with you, or how did it go from there?
Then what happened was we were both going to Origins. And that was in June. I don't know if that was the same year or not, or if that was the following year. I can't remember exactly. But I remember talking to him, and I think this was at the time when Dead of Winter was either just released or about to be released.
Yeah.
And we were walking and talking, and I said, I'd still love to work on a game with you. And he's like, yeah, definitely. I'm walking down the streets, and we walk by this pizza place. And in the window, it's this giant, poster for Dinosaur Island at the Columbus Zoo.
Oh, okay. Right.
And I look at him, and I just said, this needs to be a game. And he goes, yeah, let's work on it. So after the convention was over, we started Skyping and sharing ideas, and that was the genesis of Dinosaur Island. We started pitching ideas and doing that, and really didn't go. I'm trying to remember when we started going full force in that, but it was pretty quick into that. Jon lives about an hour and 45 minutes from me.
Yeah.
So what I did was, when we were designing Dinosaur Island, I was going down once or twice a week to his place, because he, he's married and has kids. I'm single. no kids. So it was easier for me to just drive down there.
Just rock up and say, I need
Yeah.
somebody to babysit the cardboard.
Right, exactly.
They'll be fine. They'll be
Right.
fine.
So,
but he's got an open house as well. He regularly has people round. So,
oh, sure. Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure. Is it Jamie?
Jamie's his wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they always seem to be kind of like very. Very. I'm tempted to actually take a trip myself. Just rock up one day.
He's great,
say,
you know.
Hello.
Well, now he has an office space where he lives. Not in his house, I mean, but
yeah.
in the town he lives in, it's super, economical to rent office space. So he has a couple rooms that he rents, and so I'll go down there now and we design. I don't see him as much as I used to, just because we're both so busy. But when I was doing Dinosaur Island, I made more time because I was like, I really want this to happen. So we just worked on it, and the rest is history, I guess.
But how'd you work on it? Because myself and Colin, we spoke about Dinosaur Island, and we played it. Me and Colin, we played it, and then me and the kids, we've played it a couple of times, and it seemed to be. It was one of the games that reminded me of was Forge War.
Okay.
By Isaac Childress, his kind of first game before he did that. What's that game called? The one that starts with a G. I can't.
Yeah.
You know the one that.
I know what you're talking about.
You know,
but
I can't just. Never, you can never ever. I can never remember it because you never see that game ever mentioned anywhere at all.
It just didn't really do that well.
No, it's not like it's not like it was the BG Gloomhaven Awards.
Right, I know. Yeah, don't even get me started on that. No.
Oh, okay, sorry. But the point was, Forge War, for people that haven't looked at it, was basically like a modular game of miniature games that you played, and that decided it was almost like you were building an engine that allowed you to then complete quests at the end of it. And so that side with Dinosaur Island, that's, for people who haven't played Dinosaur Island, play it, first of all. But secondly,
right.
For people who haven't played it, it is essentially you're kind of using 4 distinct phases in the game that almost act as miniature games that then come together to gain a common goal, which is to essentially create wonderful attractions for your visitors to come along so you can kind of win kind of victory points.
Right.
If I'm wrong, correct me.
No,
But,
you're right. When we started working on that, it's a very organic process with us. We sit there and we say, okay, what do we want this game to be?
Yeah.
And how do we want it to happen, right? So what kind of experience do we want the players to have? So, we talked about the DNA and, how do you get DNA? What's the, and we tried a couple different ways, and, as you're playing it, just playtesting, the feedback loop is always, is it fun? If not, go back, what makes it fun? Now, of course, fun means different things to different people. Yeah. So my idea of fun might not be your idea of fun, but the whole process, we worked on that DNA. We're like, okay, so, we wanted worker placement. We thought, how come? Because we're thinking the scientists and stuff like that. So that would be our workers, and it just kind of organically grew into these 4 phases. We didn't set out to say, okay, let's have 4 separate phases where people they'll do this in one phase and they'll do this in another phase. It was just, again, just playing and testing and saying, okay, this feels right. And I know that's not always the answer people want to hear, but a lot of designing and play testing is, does this feel right? Does this feel good? Because
it's got to click.
Yeah, what kind of experience do you want the player to have? So we, and that's what happened. It just grew out of that and worked for what we wanted it to be.
See, I imagine that in John's office or in his workspace, he has a huge table.
Mm-hmm.
He has, on a shelf, he has like a shelving unit that is full of drawers. And in these little drawers, there's like dice, there's meeples, there's counters and stuff like that. And you'll say, "Oh, we could do the DNA. We could do it dice." And he reaches up and goes into the drawer and pulls out some dice, and you write stuff on the dice, and that's how you kind of got the DNA.
And that's pretty much what it's like. I mean, at the time when we were working, we were designing in his home because he didn't have the office space yet. But in his office now, he does have a big table. He has a couple bookshelves behind him, and we both have these plastic bins, if you will, like almost like parts for like nuts and bolts and stuff. You'd find it like
that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
and you just open it up, and you've got like all these dice here. You've got all these meeples here. Meeples are separated by color, and and that's exactly it. And creating the prototype for this game was, I think, took more time than the actual design, because we were cutting and pasting and using foam board and creating the tiles for the dinosaurs, and cutting out the cards and making the dice. Oh my gosh, we went through so many iterations of those dice. If I never have to cut a sticker and paste one on a die again, I'd be okay with that. It was just horrible, but it's what it is.
Did you end up like sticking your fingers together, or you were still?
Well, it was just the sticker paper that we use. It's so hard to peel it away from the thing, and you're trying not to smear the ink. On the other side. So I remember, gosh, we ordered so many dice, just and
I could just remember the number of times you probably went home, went to the bathroom just to like wash your face because you had a long day, and you realise you've got like a sticker absent-mindedly on the side of your head. You didn't notice. You went, damn, I got drive-through for dinner.
Yeah.
They would have wondered why why's that guy got some kind of DNA tattoo on the side of his head? Is he like, it's like a gang sign or something?
Right. Yeah, so it was very fun to create and test, but very time consuming.
I mean, you said it grown organically. I mean, was it kind of like, did you end up with like 5 phases, 6 phases? I mean, one of the things I'm really interested to hear when people are talking about designing games, it's not what they built into it, it's what they ended up excluding from the game in order to make it play more streamlined, or make the rounds quicker, or make it just easier and more balanced. I mean, did you get to a point where you were actually stripping stuff out in order to make it kind of play kind of quicker and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there was a tweet at one time where John and I tweeted a picture of a box of components we cut out from the game, and it was like over 100 components. But part of that was, at one time, when you got the DNA, you actually took a chit, like almost like in Le Havre, where you take the goods. Every time you took a specific DNA, you took a chit of that color, so you would have all these DNA in front of you. And I remember we were just sitting there, and I was like, well, what if we just had beakers and we just tracked them? And it was just such a simple thing, but it's something we didn't think about. It was just so, you look back and you go, well, duh, why wouldn't you do that? Right? And I remember John creating the beakers on Google Draw or whatever and printing them out and us playing. I'm like, this is fun. It's silly that moving a cube up and down on different ones, but it felt like I was getting the DNA and spending it and using it to create things. And so we got rid of a ton of, DNA chits. And then at one time in the game we had fences for the dinosaurs.
Right, okay.
And it just added a lot to the game without doing much, in our opinion, right? So we had to look at that and say, is this compelling enough to keep in the game? And the answer for us was no. It just wasn't. Because we also looked at, what is the market that we want for this game? Because that's something a designer has to be aware of, I think. I could create the best game in the world, but if it takes 7 hours to play and the rule book is 64 pages, in reality, who's going to play that. You know, there might be a core group that'll do that, but that wasn't what we were aiming for.
Here's a question for you, Brian. Okay, as a designer, with people generally having and the culture of the new and the culture of the shiny, is it important to have games which are really, really easy to get into and start playing, as opposed to games that offer multiple amounts of replayability? And my reasoning behind that is I will probably see within any given week through various social media people talking about the so-called shelves of shame that they have with games that they haven't played. I also hear about people talking about, well, they're kind of striking off a list of games that they've managed to kind of get through and play. So with there being new Kickstarter games coming out every week, people actually receiving new games and getting their Kickstarter rewards, are you thinking on the long-term replayability, which is, I guess, is one of the other things? Do you also need to think about the accessibility? How easy is it going to be somebody to actually dive into this? Because there's a lot of stuff in Dinosaur Island when you set it up. It can be quite kind of daunting. But once you play through it, it's like this. I mean, it just rips through all the way through. Was that like a consideration?
It is. Definitely when we're looking, at least for me, because I want people to enjoy the game, and I want a lot of people to play it. And the more difficult it gets, the less your game could get played. Not saying there aren't difficult games out there that get played a ton, because there are, but they're few and far between. When we designed Dinosaur Island, we wanted a light to mid-weight Euro style game.
Yeah.
And I think we achieved that. The phases, you know, I would say the majority of people like the phases. Yes, we've had some backlash, I think, from people that don't like that it's all split up like that. But maybe this game isn't for them. With ours, I've read a lot of people on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook saying, "Oh, I was so overwhelmed by this game." But I played phase 1, I understood it. I moved on to phase 2, I understood that. And after they played through the 4 phases, all of a sudden it was, I totally get this, and they just keep going. So I think, part of that design, where we break it up into sections, it's not as overwhelming. Because if I've had people say they look at the table set up and they're just intimidated, right? It's kind of like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? That's the same thing with this game. How do you play this game? One phase at a time.
Yeah. I think my personal experience, I think when we first played it the first time, we had somebody that got kind of 10 minutes in and you could tell him he was kind of bouncing off it hard. I think my only, and I raised this when we spoke about it in the podcast, the only issue that I had wasn't the game, was that I was wanting to have an anatomy of a card. That was the only thing. Yeah. Because there was the victory point things on there. I didn't know if it cost a victory point in order to buy certain attractions, and that was the only thing. And I thought, an anatomy of a card. And that's what I said in the podcast, and I thought, well, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a really, really good fun game and then say, but you said on the podcast that you had...
Right.
You said the first time you weren't sure. It's like, well, yeah. But the second time I played it with the kids, it was like, it was quick.
Right.
Is it going to go back to the table again? Yes. Now I know how to play it.
Right.
Is it intimidating? Could be. But then I think it's one of these games that I watched the Rodney Smith video the first couple of times I played through just to familiarise myself with it. But very quickly it's quite easy to teach other people once you're very familiar with it yourself, and I get to a point where it kind of clicks, and that's it. You're just kind of off and away. So that was kind of cool. But I think the intimidation could be just the number of boards, because people aren't used to dealing with that many maybe that many tableaux.
Right.
But on the other side of it, are they not used to having a big, huge game board in front of them with their own tableau? So,
right.
you know, that's
Agreed.
maybe the kind of the difference.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you and John before you said, right, okay, tools down, hands off, this is it, this is where we are? Or were you still continuing to develop it through the actual Kickstarter campaign?
We continued it through the Kickstarter. I would say it was basically done after we had it about a year. It took about a year for us to get to the point where we felt comfortable showing it to people. And I remember we showed it to a publisher who didn't take it. I'm not going to name who that publisher was, but I kind of hope they're kicking themselves. No, I can't do that.
If you just whisper it, it's all right. Nobody listens.
I'll sign it for you. How's that?
Right. Okay.
Right.
Oh, them.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Can you believe
really?
it? I bet you they're kicking themselves now.
That's just ridiculous.
But you know, that publisher actually gave some really good feedback on that initial play, and we did trim a thing or two based on that publisher's feedback. And then later on, we showed it to Pandasaurus, and they just loved it and signed it on the spot. And that was, you know, after the revision. So after we signed it with them, you know, we went into play testing, and not a lot changed. You know, a few things here and there. So
did you play test it when it was in its raw form? Did you
Yes.
do a lot of play testing between you and John, so you were confident in the product before you were kind of going out and pitching it to people?
Definitely. It's so important, and we tried to get playtesting with our friends. And I say this, that, you know, playtesting with family is not always the best, because everything is always good with the family, right? We are lucky enough to have a group of friends that they are very, I don't want to say brutal. Maybe that is the right word. Brutal in their feedback. They don't hold back just because they know us. So they have no problem saying, well, that was awful. That felt awful. Or that was stupid. You know, why did you do that? That was a stupid decision, you know. So looking at that, it's important to definitely have the feedback testing for sure.
Which one of you crazy fools decided to go for the Dayglow design?
That would be
that
would be Pandasaurus. They signed the game, and I remember they sent us an email.
Yeah.
And they said, "This is the direction we want to go." And I said, "Okay, I trust you." You know, and then they you know, hired Quanchai, and Peter Woken did the graphic design, and I remember seeing the logo. And they tried it in several different color schemes and stuff like that. And I was like, "This is cool." I said, and I said to myself, "This is going to be divisive. You know, people are either going to love it or hate it." And that's exactly what happened when it launched. There were so many people that said, "Ugh, this color scheme just is disgusting," you know, and then other people just saying, "I absolutely love this color scheme." So it's really polarizing, and it always amazed me, you know, because I personally have never looked at a game and said, "I'm not going to play that because of the colors." But I've had people say that online, and I just think, well, that's, to me, really kind of silly. If a game is good, which we think it is, right?
Yeah.
Give it a play. If you don't like the colors, so why is that keeping you from playing a game? I don't get it. But if that's, you know, and again with the newest Kickstarter, some people saying, "Well, I'm not going to back it just because I don't like the colors." Okay, that's fine. You don't have to.
It kind of reminds me of there was, just trying to think, was it I don't know if it was a Far Cry 3 maybe. There was that, and they did a kind of like a 1980s kind of level. I think it was, I don't know if it was called Blood Dragon or something like that, but that was completely 1980s Dayglow kind of colours.
Was that
and it
Saints Row? Is that what you're thinking of?
No, it was the guys that did, I think, Far Cry 3.
Okay.
They did their own kind of 1980s kind of shoot. But it reminded me of this colour scheme. It was totally like
Right.
day glow. Mm-hmm. And it stuck out. Okay, when you were doing the dinosaurs, Brian, when you were designing it, mm-hmm. what colour were the dinosaurs? Did you go to
we didn't have actual dinosaurs. We just had cubes. So the cubes were red, I think.
Oh, that's such a... You just cop it out.
Maybe the cubes were black or red. I don't remember, but we didn't have. We thought about covering the cubes in feathers.
Really,
but we didn't do that.
Controversial,
right?
Definitely not green. There was not a hint of green in any of those cubes whatsoever.
No, not so. Nope.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer.
Sorry, it's close, but it's not what I've got in the card. Oh dear. But then, I mean, what did you like? We said, oh, it's pink dinosaur meeples. Was there any point did you kind of walk away and go, what are they doing to my game?
No, I really just trusted them, and part of it was, I was excited that the game was getting produced. There's always a feeling of, how is this, what's this going to look like in its final form? And I just remember looking at it and thinking, I'm trusting that this is going to work. And it did. Yeah. Like, for me, I have absolutely no problem with the look of it. I think it looks awesome. I love Quan Chai's art. I love the 3D rendering kind of graphics in the park. To me, it just works.
Well, I'm a big fan of Quan Chai because of the stuff he did with Eldra Games, the Catacombs and Castle game and everything like that. So he can't, as far as I'm concerned, his stuff is absolutely fantastic. Was it a two-stage kind of process in terms of, obviously, Jon had already done work. Now, I don't know in the timeline, had Jon already done work in terms of Wasteland Express delivery service with Pandasaurus? Mm-hmm. That had already kind of already existed. But was this kind of like a two-tone, because it was like a publisher saying, right, we're going to develop your game for you, but we're going to Kickstarter. So is that a case of, well, that's brilliant, they're going to do something with this, but then we have to still wait and see if the game is actually going to get made? Is that kind of a strange kind of situation to be in?
For me, initially, no, just because my first game was Kickstarted, so I just said, well, it's Kickstarter, and if it succeeds, that's great. If not, then back to the drawing board. Now, Pandasaurus had 4 or 5 previous Kickstarters that had all funded, so I definitely had faith that it would. We just didn't know to what extent. And when we launched on that first day and did, I think 80-something thousand in the first 24 hours, we were just blown away because there was really no marketing up to that. There was none of this, hey, we're going to be launching on Kickstarter on this day. The Kickstarter just dropped. Yeah. There was an announcement on Reddit, and I remember going to bed, and I think the Kickstarter started at like 9 in the morning here in the U.S., 9 Eastern. And I'm typically a night owl. I typically stay up really late, and so I usually get up around 10 a.m., 11 a.m., depending on when I go to bed. And I remember saying to myself, I am not going to wake up because I don't want to see how this Kickstarter is doing, because I don't want to know. If it flops, I don't want to know initially, right? I would just rather live in my own little bubble and not know what's going on. So I remember waking up.
Just imagine you being under the duvet and kind of lifting up slowly and reaching your arm out towards your laptop.
Right.
Just
it was my cell phone, and I remember waking up. It was like 10:30 in the morning, and I just looked at my phone, and there were multiple text messages from different people. I'm like, what is going on? And hey, can you believe it? Congratulations, awesome job. And I'm like, what is going on? Right?
I was just like, what have I done? Did I wake up really
right.
well? So, I must admit, I kind of felt a bit springy when I opened my eyes, but I didn't realise it deserved like 50 text messages, but thank you.
Yeah. So I went to Kickstarter, and I think the initial funding goal on that was 15,000, and we had 25,000 within the first half hour or something like that. crazy for us. And I just remember they blew through so many stretch goals on that first day because they didn't expect it to. They expected those stretch goals to last a week or longer, and they lasted not even a full day. I think it was 6 hours.
Because it went on out of, it was almost a year ago now.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it was the 25th of March,
Right.
2017, that it was funded.
Mm-hmm.
But it went on with a target of $15,000. It went on to do basically a grand over $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were you just... was every day kind of like, woke up this morning feeling fine? Was it nothing that...
I didn't sing that song, but I was in a good mood for the majority of that Kickstarter. I remember the first day, and luckily I was off that day, because I was at the computer the whole day, clicking on refresh, in the forums, talking to the comments, talking to people. We had launched on Tabletopia, so I was scheduling times to people come play the game with me, to keep the momentum going. And as we kept with these stretch goals and unlocking new things, people were just like going crazy over this, and it really was an amazing ride. And that last day, because I think going into the last 2 days, we were at about, I don't want to say around 340, 360 in the last 2 days, and then just to see the huge spike in pledges the last day was incredible. I remember being up to that. I was clicking that refresh button every second, like the last couple minutes of the campaign, and just seeing those, cha-ching, 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 those dollar signs just going up, and it was just incredible.
Like putting gas in the tank.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing, just watching it going...
Yep.
I mean, did you then have to have the conversation with Jon and say, we're going to need some more stretch goals? I mean, was that the next conversation, or had you already planned that out? Because it's the stretch goals. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is what we see. I mean, people say, well, where's my stretch goals? Do I put in 10 stretch goals? Is that over ambitious? But then you get guys like, say, Steamforge, or Steamforge, any of these guys that do really, really well on Kickstarter, and they end up doing just stretch goal after stretch goal after stretch goal. Did you guys have a plan for stretch goals? Did you have a limited amount, or did you have to have emergency meetings with post-it notes? And
there was a little bit of emergency towards the end, because like we said, that the campaign did so well that we didn't expect to hit all the stretch goals. So we had goals out there, definitely, that we didn't think we'd hit, but we did. So what happens when that, when we do hit it? So people towards the end were like, well, do we get another stretch goal? And we're like, no, we're out. And we had one last one that we didn't think, we'd hit, that we added in. It wasn't a last minute thing to add, but it was adding I think it was 39 cards to the end game kind of thing. And we saved that for the very last, because we're like, well, we got to have something for the very end, right? So there were other things we were adding in between that were like the emergency meeting things, like, well, what if can we add another Dino Meeple? And they're sitting there crunching the numbers, saying, well, we have to hit this amount of money before we can add another Dino Meeple, kind of thing. And so we wanted to leave something for the very end.
Yeah,
which was
you've got to have production. Is it production meetings, and you've got to have cost meetings? Because I think when I spoke to Jamie Stegmaier, he said there is a point in the production run where it doesn't matter how many more copies that you make.
Exactly.
You're not going to get a financial payback. If something costs, if this is costing $25 to make,
right,
the manufacturer can't drop it anymore,
right,
without without it not working for them financially.
Right.
So you get to the kind of that point. So was there some real kind of realistic? Did it have to be kind of realistic stretch goals that you guys had to actually plan out and say, like, financially, if this is going to X number of backers, then we need to make sure we're kind of costing this out. So we have to have a real think about what we're doing. Is that why it's easier to maybe put cards in, as opposed to obviously tooling up a different meeple?
That's exactly it. Because cards are typically one of the cheapest things to add, just because you're going to get a certain number of cards on a sheet anyway. Typically 18 cards on a sheet. So, if we've used 16 on the sheet, we can definitely fit in 2 more. So, hey, let's add that on. So with the stretch goals, exactly what you said, you have to look at the cost, and that's something a lot of people don't understand. They think, well, gosh, you made $500,000, you should be able to add another Dino Meeple. Well, but there's only so many that can fit in a mold, right? Yeah. If we add another one, we have to create another mold that'll hold, and all of a sudden you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to create another mold. Yeah. And then you have to pay for the injection molding, the plastic, and there's a cost per meeple. Well, if each person's getting, at that time I think it was 7 meeples, and they're costing X pennies per one, that's eating at your profit.
Yeah, because it becomes one of these things is you got to balance this out, and you can see why there's certain people that are saying, well, this has to be a Kickstarter exclusive, because if we take it to retail, it's going to cost us money. We've got to have a game going out, and there's got to be some kind of money exchanging hands, because otherwise it's just not cost effective for us to go ahead and print 25,000 copies of this game, because we're just going to end up broke if we don't then shift, half of those, and they go ahead and sell kind of no matter what's kind of going on. How many of those snap bracelet things do you own, Brian?
I only own one.
That's so not true.
One from Dinosaur Island. No. I actually, it's funny.
Look at my snap bracelets. Look at my snap bracelets.
Right. I should have put in my new contract that I get multiple snap bracelets from the expansion, just because having the one just isn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the stretch goals quickly, the Pogs was one of the things that you said. Well, one of the things I think that. Did it have to get kind of pulled back? I think they were looking at the plastic Pogs for Dinosaur Island, and then they had to pull them back because the manufacturer was just like, we can't do these.
Yeah, the only thing that was possible was the cardboard, and the amount of flack we got for the Pogs just blew my mind, because it was something additional. It was something free that you're getting for pledging the base game, right? Something, and it was fun, and it was kitschy 90s fun, and people just saying, well, this doesn't do anything for the gameplay and I hate it. Okay, we're sorry.
Okay, well, what you can do is if you want, you can put them on your eyes,
right? And
you can have different, you can pretend,
right?
They're very cheap contact lenses for Halloween.
Right.
Dress up your eyes to look like different things from Dinosaur Island, or alternatively, go outside for a bit.
Right.
Stop worrying about these things.
Right. If you don't like them, then okay. You can't please everyone with everything.
It's actually, it's okay. It's okay to kind of. Not like things.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to go and rant about them.
Correct.
It's fine. It's just bits of cardboard. Because as far as I could say, the only thing about it was it's like, how do I fit this and the rest of the stuff in the box?
Right. Yeah, the fitting in the box thing. We tell people throw away the insert. That's our solution. Yeah. Well, the thing, and again, the insert wasn't designed to be functional. It looks nice when you open it up, but that's to hold everything in place. So the cards stay in place, the boards stay in place. That's the function of that insert. So my copy, I took the insert out and threw it away.
I recycled mine responsibly, Brian.
Well, of course I did that as well. I threw it away right into the recycle bin.
Each to their own. Brian Lewis,
right?
Worldwide polluter.
Oh, nah, I've been called worse.
Totally. I don't know. That's the reason. That's the reason the dinosaurs went extinct, was because of some kind of climate event.
Oh, I thought it was because of non-recycling.
Probably that as well.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They had the board games and they decided not to. They decided to just chuck their inserts away when they got their original Kickstarters as well. But I can't imagine a Tyrannosaurus Rex kind of being able to play any type of board games at all.
No, I mean, yeah, I'm not even gonna go there. But okay.
But I mean, did you? Okay, let's dispel the myth. You're not sitting around with 50 million copies of Dinosaur Island about your person. I mean, if the normal kind of thing happens, is usually you get your production copy round about the same time that everybody else gets their copy.
I got mine after.
So,
Yeah.
It's not like Brian. I mean, when we first came on and we started talking, Brian was on Skype and we could see each other, and I turned my camera off because I don't want to frighten anyone away. But it's not like Brian had like 52 copies of various of Dinosaur Island kind of sitting beside him, and like, with his big sign saying, "Here's my stash."
Right. It's not floor to ceiling Dinosaur Island in my office. But I did receive some copies. Sure, that's part of my contract. But I donated a few copies to a charity or a gathering of board gamers. I've split up one of my copies. Someone on Facebook was like, "Hey, my kid spilled. I'm so upset. My kid spilled water all over my Lewis Leviathan's board and some of the cards." And I sent him an email saying, "Hey, what's your address? I'll send you replacements." Because he was saying how much he loved the game and how much he loved playing it with his family. And like, to me, that was like, well, I have this copy that I already know how the game plays. I have a couple copies. I just broke it open and sent him some replacement parts.
What was it like opening the copy for the first time? Because obviously you would have had your eyes on the various kind of production copies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I admit it was really exciting. Now, that being said, the very first copy I opened was the standard edition, because that's what they sent from the printer.
Yeah.
And I opened it on. I did a Facebook Live feed, and it was really cool to open that up. Not as cool as opening the deluxe edition for sure, but because when I got that deluxe edition and I opened that up and I felt those coins, I was like, "Oh my god, these coins are so heavy."
I'll tell you what happened when I was at the Games Club and I took along Dinosaur Island. I was like, "Guys, feel the weight of this box," and everybody reached out with one hand, and it's like, "No, you can't do one hand." And they went and got shut up, and they went to take it, and you seen their hands repeatedly.
Yeah, and then they sent you the medical bills. They sent you the medical bills later.
Yeah, a couple of broken fingers, but that was a weighty.
Yeah, well, and that's what surprised everyone, I think. And there were some complainers earlier on about the cost of the game. There's no way this is an $80 game. Personally, I think there is a ton of stuff in there for an $80 game. I think it is worth it. There will still be people that argue with me, and that's fine. They can have their own wrong opinion. But as a designer, I look at that saying, there's no way this could have been done without Kickstarter. Especially those coins. And there were even people complaining about the weight of the coins. These coins are too heavy. It's like, okay, well, you can't win. You can't win too heavy, too light, too shiny, not shiny enough. Who knows?
I've found that you can tell these people if they don't like the coins, they can use them at the local petrol station, and they fit in the vacuum bit, so they can vacuum their car.
It's good to know. Get your car clean.
You can actually clean your car.
There you go.
Shut up, go outside and sort out that car.
Yeah.
That everybody keeps telling you to get sorted out, and stop complaining about your coins.
Yep.
There's a lot of people. Do you know what? It's not people that complain about, this fundamentally, this game is broken. It's people that complain about, that's not amber coloured, that amber on that dice. This is what amber looks like, and that's a shade too orange. It's like, what are you, the Amber Appreciation Society?
President. Running for re-election.
Yeah, and it's like he's going to get re-elected because there's only one member, and it's them.
Wouldn't it be bad? Wouldn't it be sad if he didn't win? I'm sorry, I voted for someone else.
Exactly. What? Oh, it's my self-hatred kicking in.
Yeah.
So, like Ocean's 12, the gang kind of got back together.
Yes.
Because obviously what happens is that you have the game trends for a while on BGG, and people are loving it left, right and centre. Folk are making videos. There's, talk of when people are going to get their hands on the game themselves, and there's a lot of excitement, and, and some people are like, there was, just logistics with everybody getting their games at once and shipping out so many copies that people think that shipping out 100 copies to people is exactly the same as shipping out 1,000 copies to people.
Right.
And kind of don't realise the logistics behind it all. But then, did you... Who was the George Clooney that came back and said, right, everybody's getting together and we're going to do the next version? Because obviously with Board Game Geek, there'll be people that'll be making variations of the rules and house ruling stuff and things like that as well. So when the Dulosaur stuff came out, and then you're working on obviously the next iteration for Dinosaur Island itself. I mean, how did that all come about?
As the original campaign was going on, there were talks of an expansion already. John and Nathan and Molly, the heads of Pandasaurus, and I were all in a Skype chat that we, that's how we communicate about this, Kickstarter going on currently and the past Kickstarter. And, almost immediately after the success or during the success of the Kickstarter, we're like, well, we should start working on an expansion. And that's exactly what it was. It was, okay, the Kickstarter finished, here's some ideas. Let's write down some ideas as to what we want. And it literally started immediately after the Kickstarter, for the totally liquid expansion. Ian's Dulosaur Island, that kind of happened in the summer last year. He messaged me. He said, "Hey, I have an idea for a 2-player version of Dinosaur Island. Is it okay if I work on that?" And I was like, "Yeah, go ahead. I don't care. We're friends. Just go for it." And so he did, and it was different and from Dinosaur. And it was a strict 2-player only, less table space, easier, I don't want to say easier rules, but easier setup, and played different enough that you would get a different experience playing Dulosaur than you would Dinosaur Island 2-player. And that's been a lot of people saying, well, I don't understand why I need Dulosaur if I have Dinosaur. It's two totally different experiences. Why do you play Agricola or Agricola All Creatures Great and Small, right?
Yeah.
All Great and Small is a smaller footprint, doesn't take as long to set up. You can play in 30 to 45 minutes and you're done. You pack it back up in a little box and you can take it with you. And that's exactly what Ian was going for on Dulosaur. So that was pitched we had tested it previous to pitching it to Pandasaurus, obviously, and they took it to Gen Con, and they loved it, signed it, and we went right into playtesting on that. More blind playtesting, or among our small groups, and then we opened it up to more public, private playtesting.
Yeah, and obviously the feedback must have been good, because here it is sitting as part of this campaign with the Totally Liquid Extreme Edition.
Yeah, I have a lot of positive feedback. People saying this is a great 2-player game. We love this game. Yeah, definitely it's working. And then the Totally Liquid expansion, a little bit harder to test. just because the expansion's more modular, so you can add things in and out. So not everyone playtests every bit of it. So, the feedback we get is, okay, I played with the blueprints this time, or okay, I played with the expansions and executives. And the feedback on all of that has been very good. I don't know that I've had anyone come back say they hated it. And it's all blind playtesting, so, they don't know who's reading these comments, right? So, the feedback has been very good. Multiple people saying they can't see themselves ever playing the game again without the extensions and the executives that we've added in, which has been really fun.
So is it is it basically allowing you to add in different kind of almost mechanics and functionality into the game?
Well, the main thing was that we knew obviously was going to be in there no matter what was the fifth player, because people were clamoring for a fifth player. So we said, well, this is an easier thing to add because we know how the game works. All we have to do is, make sure there's enough tiles, make sure there's enough DNA dice, all those kinds of things to get it to play at 5-player without adding anything else. And then we could just kind of sat and said, okay, so how do we want to make this different? How do we want to make it more variable, more fun? And that was the extensions on the park and the executives, which each extension and each executive are unique.
Yeah.
And you draft them at the beginning of the game in snake order. So I may get and you get your choice of either the extension, and they're all random. There are multiples in the game. You deal out the number of players. You deal out that amount. So if there are 5 people playing, I deal out 5 extensions and 5 executives. I show them. First person takes either an extension or an executive, your choice, and then that person's going to get the very last thing left because they'll be last to pick when it comes back to them. So the extensions are all different things, where one of them is a goat pen, right? So you get these little goat meeples. There was a stretch goal that was unlocked because originally they were going to be little cardboard chits.
Yeah.
Because the expansion's very reasonably priced. I think it's $45 for the amount of stuff you get in there. I think it's reasonably priced. With that particular extension, I can pay $2 to buy a goat and keep them in my pen, and then when I go to do the security portion of my park, I can feed a goat to reduce security by 1 temporarily for that round. So I don't have to. If I'm in round 4, 5, or 6, and my security's upkeeping my security is $5 a round, $5 to move it up each time, I can spend a goat, not cost me anything, and not have to worry about security, that round. So those kinds of things. So all these different boards have different functions, and then each person gets an executive, and every executive is different. So I can't think of one off the top of my head. A general one, there's one that allows you to use him as I think it's the chief financial officer. You put him on one of the chits or things in the marketplace, and if someone buys that, then you get the money.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's a way for you to get money. So it's also, you can say, well, which one of these is really good, because I'm going to place it on that. And if no one buys it, then he gets an option of buying that tile for himself at a discount.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so very cool, different interactions, different combinations of things going on.
Just little bits of changes, kind of here, there, and everywhere, just to add again, kind of add to the kind of the replayability.
Right.
Now, in terms of Kickstarter, this is this is going gangbusters.
It is. Again,
this is them crossing a T-Rex with a Velociraptor.
Yeah,
type of thing.
It's a Velocirex, or a T-Raptor. It is doing, again, way better than we had even hoped, I think. On the day one, I know we were thinking, I personally, I can't speak for anyone else in the campaign that worked on it. But I was thinking, okay, it'd be really awesome to break 100K on the first day again, because we did 80K on the first one.
Yeah.
And then we ended up doing I think it was over 400,000. It was crazy. And right now we're at about 780, 790.
788.
Okay. So
788, 154.
Yeah.
And it's, you still got 31 days to go.
I know. So it's been crazy. I mean, the response has been awesome. Don't get me wrong. I'm loving it. I don't click as much as I did last year, just because I'm like, okay, I can't let this consume my life. But it is really cool. Every morning when I wake up, I click on it and see where we're at, and I said, what an awesome day. I'm so glad people are enjoying it and backing it.
Is that what you're having to do then? Is to make sure that you're keeping enough distance to not end up being upset? I mean, is it the case of you're going to be content at the fact it's doing really, really well?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stretch goals are in place. You might have to have an emergency stretch goal meeting if
Mm-hmm.
things go too extreme.
Yep.
But are you just quite happy to kind of let this kind of roll away? Is the pressure kind of off you?
It is.
At the moment?
It is.
I
look at it and I just say I'm really lucky, I guess is the word. I am lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I deserve this, but it's happened, and I'm really grateful for it.
Have you thought about? I mean, have you got the A4 pad with all the other game ideas that you want to put together? Then
it might be it might be A5. I don't know. I do have other things that I'm working on. So, I do have another Kickstarter launching. I believe it's April 3rd. It's not me personally. Another publisher, small publisher here in the U.S. called Gozer Games. It's called Stab a Panda. And before you can contact your local, animal authority, complaining, it is an adultish party game. There's a standard deck and a not safe for work deck, with art by Ogloff. It's I want to say it's kind of like a would you rather game. But it has a little bit of a game element to it. And the whole thing is, everyone gets 2 cards, and they choose one for the player who's the lead player. And so this person's going to have 4 cards in front of them. They're going to read them out loud, and then they have to secretly rank in what order they would do these items. 1 being from yeah, I do it, and 4 being there's no way I do that. And everyone else has the same ranking cards, and they're trying to figure out how you're going to rank them. And you score points for matching points. So it's a very easy to learn game and a very simple game. It's just something I co-designed that with a friend of mine, Jeremiah Lee, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was signed by a publisher almost on the spot. I won't name that publisher because
the sign language again.
Yeah, exactly. It's that one, right? Yeah. So they sat on it for several years, and we just basically said we're taking it back because it never went to print, and they said okay.
That's ridiculous. I've heard rumors about them, but I didn't want to say anything.
Right, exactly. So, it is a very different game than Dinosaur Island, but I really do love almost all kinds of games. I love light party games. I love heavy games. So I created something that I just thought was fun, could play in 10, 15 minutes, was silly, could be a little bit raunchy if people wanted that. Doesn't have to be raunchy because you don't have to play with the not safe for work deck, but it's there, and so that's something that's there. John and I have another game that we co-designed that is scheduled, we hope, to go to Kickstarter in September, with a small publisher that has had success on Kickstarter in the past.
So is that what type of theme is that game? I'm not going to ask you for details.
It's a co-op.
Oh, okay. Has this, with you kind of having the success at Dinosaur Island, has it opened certain doors for you in terms of accessibility within other parts of the industry? I mean, has it made you? I mean, are you able to? Are you able to kind of like? Do you think you're going to be able to give you a bit more free rein in terms of what you're going to be designing in the future because you've got this kind of behind you?
Maybe. That's a little bit difficult question to answer because I don't do it full time, and so I'm not hustling all the time. Jon hustles a lot, and he's really good at it. And he's always reaching out to publishers and creators and, hey, let's work together. Hey, are you interested in this? Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm kind of the opposite. I kind of sit back and wait for an opportunity to kind of rear its head and say, oh, I'm interested in that. Not to say I don't talk to publishers. Pandasaurus has been great. I've pitched a couple of things to them because I like working with them. And it's kind of that thing where you work with people you want to work. You want to work with those people you like. So I like Pandasaurus. And I like working with them, so I'm going to let them see some stuff too. So I haven't been to a ton of conventions. Actually, since Dinosaur Island hit, I haven't been to any conventions because Dinosaur Island really hit late December, early January in terms of starting shipping. So there haven't been any major conventions yet. So my first major convention is going to be Geekway to the west in May, and then Origins in June. So I may or may not be talking to some publishers. I'm not sure yet. I think, definitely having a hit game under your belt helps. But a publisher is still going to look for something that sells. Just because you created a good selling game doesn't mean they're going to take whatever you pitch at them.
What's the difficult second album? As they would call it in music,
or the sophomore season and second season of a hit television show, right? Yeah,
exactly. It's kind of like, can you continue the magic?
Right.
Did you catch the lightning in the bottle, and was that what you're good for, or can you do other things as well? So I guess there can be a lot of pressure, but I guess with you having the working relationship with Jon. I mean, he's going to provide you with a lot of support because that's just the type of guy that kind of Jon
definitely
is. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So as we said, the Kickstarter runs for, it's got another month. I mean, it's 30 odd days. It'll probably be maybe 28, maybe 27, might be 30, depending on when this is coming out. But it's almost, it's going to be 800,000 easily. Probably within the next 5 minutes, to be honest. And if people want to get in, you can get in. $35 will get you the Dinosaur Island Extreme Edition. $45 will get you the Total Liquid Extreme Edition. $70 will get you both Dinosaur and Totally Liquid.
Right.
And then you've got the Dinosaur Island Extreme Edition, and that's the base game. With the base game with all the extremely heavy metal coins.
Well, these are the lighter coins, so that is a difference. So the base edition has a lot of the Kickstarter stretch goals from the original Kickstarter, but it's missing a couple things. So the coins are lighter in this edition, and that will help save on shipping.
Yeah, exactly. That shipping must have been an absolute nightmare.
It was.
But what we'll do is we will put the link for the Kickstarter in the show notes.
Awesome.
So that people can click not that people have already used to yes, we know Dinosaur Island. We've clicked through already and pledged. Where do you exist on the internet webs, Mr. Lewis?
So on Twitter, I am at Brian Lewis Games. And Instagram, same thing, Brian Lewis Games. Facebook is, you can find me I pop into a lot of the chat rooms, I say chat rooms, gosh, I'm dating myself here. Back on the internet chat rooms.
I've got my IRQ code.
Yeah. I'm fancy. I'm using AOL chat rooms.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
he's
instant
there's Donnie,
messenger.
he's gone AFK.
I typically post. I hang out in Board Game Spotlight on Facebook and the board game group. So those are the ones I post most in. So if you see me responding or posting, feel free to send me a friend request.
Cool.
And that's basically where I hang out.
Cool. I've got one more question for you,
Okay.
Brian. You are stuck in a dinosaur island resort, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The dinosaurs have broken free.
Mm-hmm.
There is velociraptors velocirapting. There is Diplodocuses plodding about.
Mm-hmm.
There's brachiosaurs just breaking everything, and occasionally there's the roar of the T-Rex in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But you're in the shop, and you're in the board game section of the shop. Now, for some reason, as you know, Mr. Hammond, he spared no expense.
Right.
So he's got every single board game that there is in existence in this shop, okay? Okay. Jeff Goldblum,
Mm-hmm.
he is waiting outside in his truck. He's about to take you away to safety.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Now what he says is, you can take 3 games. That's all you could take, okay?
Okay.
There's any games you want in there, because as I say, Mr. Hammond spared no expense.
Right.
What 3 board games do you take with you, Brian?
Man, that is it.
And they can be expansions,
Yeah,
second editions, first editions.
That is a tough question. Probably I would take Brass.
Oh, okay.
I'd probably take Keyflower.
Okay.
And, ooh.
You're not going for the obvious one that you talked about at the top of the show, then?
No. Maybe Concordia.
Okay.
There's so many that are like all vie for that top spot, but it really does depend on my mood. I love Carcassonne. I love Carcassonne though, so maybe Carcassonne would be up there.
It's got to be 3. It's
I
got
know.
to be 3, Brian.
How about 3.5?
No,
I'll
3.
throw the box away for Carcassonne, and I'll just take the
No,
tiles.
the glass is breaking in the background. There's a claw noise, and somewhere a goat is sounding frightened.
All right, so, oh my gosh, Carcassonne. I'll take Carcassonne. I know, I'd get a ton of plays out of that. I'll take Carcassonne. Okay. I'll take Concordia, and I'll take Brass.
There you go. So you jump into the back of the very quiet Jeff Goldblum, because we can't do his impression.
Right.
And you drive off to the helicopter. Cue music. Cue you getting into the helicopter with your board games.
Right.
Na 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 na.
Right.
That's again. I don't know how you got away with that logo without having a knock on the door by Mr. Spielberg.
Well, the copyright laws exist for a reason, and so do the parody laws.
Right. Okay. That says an awful lot.
Yep.
Says an awful lot indeed. Thank you very, very much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you
really
for having
appreciate the time. Really appreciate the time that you've given, and I'm sure that we'll be seeing your name about the places of board gamishness for many, many years to come, with many, many other games kind of coming out as well. If anyone that's listening tonight, if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then please go onto the internet. You can find us on Twitter at We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Facebook at We're Not Wizards. You can find us on Instagram at We're Not Wizards. You can find us on YouTube at We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast, because our lovely podcast host Podbean makes sure that all of our episodes automatically go into YouTube as well. You can find us on Spotify. No idea why. But you can find us on Stitcher and Spreaker and Acast and Podknife and all these lovely places. If you like us, if you like what you've listened tonight, please tell somebody else. We have always got lots of lovely people coming up on a regular basis that we're speaking, and Brian is just an example of many fabulous people who have guested on the show. You might have missed the episode that we had with Carla Kopp from Weird Giraffe Games. She was talking about fire in the library. give it a listen. Lots of other episodes are going to be coming up over the next couple of weeks and have already been as well. We've got other 2 previous episodes with Jon Gilmour, who talks a little bit about Dinosaur Island at the time when it was when he was putting it together. So that's always worthwhile checking out as well. However, if you have liked what you've listened tonight, please jump onto Apple Podcasts and drop us a subscription. Or if you like us even more, drop us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us a 10, because it kind of makes me big-headed. But don't give us a 1, because I'm an ugly crier. But give us like maybe something in the average range, like a 5, because it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic, Mr. Brian Lewis. So thank you again for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it today.
Good. I'm glad, because I was worried for a second that John was going to ward you off. And there's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Brian?
We are not.
Yeah, we're geneticists. Mucking around with DNA and stuff,
right?
Making big scary lizards, building parks, building attractions, and then getting eaten in the 3rd act, because that's what happens.
But we keep coming back.
We do keep coming back. Yep. Sequel after sequel after
mm-hmm.
sequel after sequel. But until and there's only one other thing to do, which is say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Mr. Brian Lewis. Say goodbye, Brian.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s. The Kickstarter's there, the dinosaurs are there, the island is there, the expansions are there, the 2 players there. You just got to decide if it's going to be you that's going to be there as well. But until the next time, goodbye.